All right, here we are. It is Fantasy Football Now on FanStream Sports, powered by DSP Media. I'm Jeff Fiddle. Follow me on X at It Happens. He is Chad Rink. Follow him on X at Chad Ochorenko. We got so much to get into today. I was telling Chad, told him before we got on the air here, that I've got my first fantasy draft proxy draft assigned to me. That's coming up on Saturday night, and this is why it's so important to pay attention to your draft rules, because it's a 6-point passing touchdown, which automatically makes the quarterbacks a lot more valuable, and it's a super flex, which increasingly makes them more valuable. In that situation, Chad, are you always going quarterback, or can you think of exceptions where you might not take a quarterback with your first two picks?
You're definitely taking one in the first round. The only way I would think it'd be different if you had a late first,
okay,
and someone like Jefferson Chase were there, and then you knew you could grab another one. But in a 12, if it's a 12 team, you got to probably take two quarterbacks in the first two rounds. Those are tough, man. Because if everyone's pretty savvy, they will be jumping all over the quarterbacks. And if you have the first pick and you take Mahomes, maybe you wait. I mean, that's the thing. If you have the top three pick and you get Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and then you just get a ton of run of quarterbacks, and then you're like, but you don't want to not take one at the 2-3 turn or something, and then they're all gone.
Yeah.
So, but like a Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and then you add like a Geno or a Carr is not horrible in a 6-touchdown super flex,
because those guys are still going to outscore everyone else as far as the position players go with the 6 points like that, because even the worst quarterback of the top 15 you would think will have more passing touchdowns than anyone's going to score among receivers or running backs typically, unless you have a Jamal Williams type year. By and large, though, those guys score 10-12 touchdowns. It's hard to find a quarterback who's a starter who plays all year to throw that few of touchdowns.
Exactly. And then you got to figure too, like the top probably 20-25 scorers in a 6-touchdown passing league are all going to be quarterbacks. So if you get two of the top 20 scorers, you should be fine.
The Texans announced that C.J. Stroud will be starting their first preseason game. I'm excited to see that. Don't know how many series these guys will play. Probably 2-3 series, I'm guessing, this first game maybe. But C.J. Stroud, though, will be starting for the Texans. So we get a chance to see him on Thursday. And then the Lions head coach Dan Campbell says he's envisioning a two-headed running back monster with David Montgomery came over from the Bears, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And he thinks, Gibbs is more that third down kind of back out of the backfield catching passes kind of thing. Montgomery more the in between the tackles kind of guy. Does that surprise you? Does it change your view of either one? He's come out and said that here in the middle of, or not in the middle of August yet, early August.
It doesn't really surprise me, because if you look at what they did last year, that's what they did last year.
Right.
They had with Swift and Williams, and they kind of both share time. Montgomery's been a solid back. He's not super explosive. He's more of he'll get you 3.5 yards pretty much every carry. He's solid. He doesn't fumble the ball very often. So I could see them using them both, and it's just gonna be weird. I could see them starting off with the first series, one, switch the other, or even use, hey, Montgomery's starting off, and then once we get in the midfield, maybe throw Gibbs in there to, come out of the backfield, that kind of stuff. And then probably when you get to the goal line, it's going to be mostly Montgomery.
Yeah, that's kind of a look at it, too. I think that you'll see, if it's a 3rd and goal from the 6, you'll see Gibbs out there probably, but inside the 5, 1st and goal, 2nd goal, probably more likely Montgomery's one you're going to see out there getting the bulk of the carries. Okay, let's play the game of sweeping the nation. I would draft him. I would not draft him. And I want to go through some players here, and I'll give them to you, Chad, because some guys in the news lately as possible landing spots, running backs specifically, that have had some teams tied to them. And I want to get your take. I'll give you the player, the teams that are linked to him, and tell me I would draft him if he's on this team at a normal spot, or I would not draft him on this team at his normal spot kind of thing. So we'll start off with Zeke Elliott.
Okay.
He's been linked to the Cowboys, Patriots, and Jets, but also rumblings, but not too much, about Browns and Bengals maybe looking at him if they get him cheap enough. He's an Ohio State guy, so it makes sense there too also. But Cowboys, Patriots, Jets, Browns, Bengals. If Zeke goes to what team, do you like him? If he goes to what team, do you not like him?
I think the only teams I would draft him for, if he goes back to the Cowboys, because you kind of know what his role is going to be. It'll probably be a little bit less, and they'll give Pollard more, but you know what his role is going to be. And he was somewhat productive last year. And I think the only other team I think I would take a chance on would be the Bengals, just because if Mixon goes down, he'd probably be the guy over Chase Brown. If he goes to New England, I really don't want any part of him. The Jets, probably not. But if they get him, that means they didn't get Cook. But I think if Zeke's there, I think they just run with Breece Hall from the get-go, and Zeke's going to spell him. Browns, I don't think that's a good fit because Chubb's going to get most of the work, and he's not really the kind of change pace back that Kareem Hunt was last year. And I think that's what Jerome Ford's going to be, which I just saw he kind of got dinged up in practice too. So I think Cowboys, Bengals is it for Zeke, and even there, I would. He'd have to be really late. I wouldn't be going on my way to draft him.
God, yeah. I looked at all these teams, and I don't know if I like him really on any of them unless a running back gets hurt. Obviously if Pollard gets dinged up again or something, then yeah, I like Zeke there. I probably like him for the Browns and Bengals only because I don't think they have great running backs, veteran running backs behind them. And I know that he won't get a ton of carries necessarily, but I think he would be the clear number 2 guy at either one of those spots. So I could be talked into Browns and Bengals. I think the Cowboys, I just don't like, I never like it when a guy goes back to a team after getting cut, and the Cowboys basically go find a better deal if you want to get one, and he hasn't been able to find one yet. Obviously he's familiar with Dallas and what they do there, but Dallas is going to lean so hard on Tony Pollard and run him into the ground because he's on the franchise tag this year, and they could make a decision after this year if they want to keep Pollard again. But I don't like him on the Patriots or Jets either. I think the Patriots with Ramondre Stevenson there and just the quirkiness of how Belichick handles his running backs, I wouldn't trust anything there. And the Jets, yeah, they're going to look at Breece Hall. I don't think Cook goes there, but let's talk about Dalvin Cook next now. I'll give you 3 teams. And I don't know, maybe you like all 3 of these teams for Dalvin Cook and you would take them, but let's go Jets, Dolphins, Chiefs. Out of those 3, is there any you love, any you don't like?
There's not many teams that Dalvin Cook would land on that I wouldn't want to get shares at him at the right spot. So for these, I think it's obviously, I think it's Dolphins 1. No, I'm going to say Chiefs. Chiefs 1. That offense is too good. Dolphins 2, because you still think they still have Mostert, Wilson.
Yeah.
There's just too many. And I imagine they keep them all because they can't stay healthy. So I think the Chiefs, any running back goes to the Chiefs. Because I still think Cook's better than Pacheco. They're a little bit different. And then Jets would be 3rd, but I would draft him on pretty much almost any team that he would fall to.
Yeah, the thing with the Chiefs is interesting because Andy Reid seems to thrive with no-name running backs, which is weird, but because when he had Le'Veon Bell, and granted Bell wasn't great, but Bell never got used there. CMC came in with all the hype, and he had a great game early on in his career. He's been nothing since then, and so Pacheco comes in as a 7th-round pick and is great. I don't think Reid would want to upset what they're doing offensively so much, and they've got a good thing going. It seems like they've got, the locker room, there's camaraderie there. I think that they all feel comfortable, and bringing someone like Cook might disrupt things a little bit. So I don't know if he would go there or not. Obviously, depending on what they offer him, he'd go anywhere if money was right. Dalvin Cook's a great talent, but I can't talk myself into any one of these teams as far as taking where I think he will go. I think he'll get overdrafted if he signs somewhere. It'll probably be at a point where I'm not willing to spend capital on Dalvin Cook. If he falls far enough, sure. But I just don't think, based on the hype around Dalvin Cook and the history he's got, and again, uber talented, I don't think he will be at a spot where I would feel comfortable taking him, no matter which team he goes to.
Yeah, I agree, because get him in the 7th round, 8th round as your RB4. That's great. But it really sounds like he wants to go to New York, but then he also has ties because he was from Miami, Florida State. So I think those 2 are the ones. And I think wherever he lands, I don't think it's really going to change his draft stock too much. But still, I think there's just other guys I like, because he's going to end up, if he goes up a couple rounds, he may follow where I'm trying to get a quarterback. Yeah. And I'd probably rather get Lawrence or Herbert than like him as my RB3.
And he's been up and down the last couple of years. He's been in and out of the lineup with injuries and whatnot. Alexander Madison's been the better running back for the most of the time the last couple of years. So Dalvin's bigger on his name, I think, than what he can do going forward. All right, let's go to Indianapolis now with Jonathan Taylor. And he wants traded. Irsay said he's not going to trade him, but let's just play the game. If he does get traded, say to a couple of teams have been linked to. There's been, a push to, if you're a Super Bowl contender, your win now status, go out and look at him. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but Colts, Bills, Chiefs. Again, we go with the Chiefs, and now we bring the Bills into the mix, though, or stay with the Colts. Where do you love him? Where do you not love him?
I love him staying with Indy. I think I would kind of love him in Buffalo because I still think, no matter what people want to say, well, there's three backs there. Like Taylor's by far the best back there, and would just make that team ridiculous. So I would, if he went to Buffalo, I'd love it. And then it just would mean Cook would just probably end up being the third down back.
Right.
Damien Harris would just kind of be an afterthought. Like I said, with the same with the Chiefs, like if he lands there, he would be phenomenal. But like again, I don't think the Chiefs are really going to bring anybody unless it's somebody that would just take over like a Jerick McKinnon role if they just feel he's not doing what he can. I think they like Pacheco, or they'll just get a guy and then they'll cut CEH. So Taylor's one of those guys too. Like even more than Cook, he could land pretty much anywhere, and I would be happy drafting him because he's fallen now. He's now really like in the mid second is where he's kind of falling right now,
which is amazing.
I know because like he's probably going to play.
Yeah, right. He's going to play somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Let's. I believe I agree with you on that. I think that if he stays with the Colts, I probably like him there the best. The Bills, he'd be the best running back there. They have so many weapons there compared to what the Colts have that you'll see it get spread around a lot with Cook, with Diggs. You've got other options there for them, and Allen's legs as well, to where he might run more. We're not sure he's going to start in Indianapolis week one, if it's going to be Richardson or not. It could be, but he would certainly have some running prowess there, but he's not going to have the confidence to pass the ball, I don't think, as much early on, which would force him to lean more on John. And look, Irsay, the smart thing to do, just like what we talked about with when I said about Pollard, give him the damn ball a lot. Give it to him a lot, and then burn it. Get rid of him and get out of the Jonathan Taylor game and use a draft pick somewhere else than on a running back if you want to. All right, Josh Jacobs, still not in camp yet. Could still sign that Raiders tender. The reports are out there that the Raiders look to move him. If they pull the tender, pull the franchise tag, and trade him. Two teams that are interested in him are the Broncos and the Chiefs. A couple of AFC West rivals. Or I guess they pull the tag, he could be a free agent then is what he'd be. But if we got the Chiefs all over this thing so far, but out of Raiders, Broncos, and Chiefs, is there one you like more than the other?
I would like the Broncos, which is weird because the only reason I say that is because my buddy that works at the Athletic sent me a stat.
Right.
That in Sean Payton's 15 years with the Saints, their team finished first in running back targets 8 times.
Oh, wow.
And they only finished outside the top 5 once.
Okay.
So if he went there, I know Javonte Williams there, but he's still coming back from the injury. So I think they would just use him like crazy. Then I think the Raiders, and then and anyone that goes to the Chiefs, you're going to kind of be interested in. So I don't know, man. Jacobs, I really have 0 shares of him because of where you have to draft him. He's usually end of first, early second.
Right.
And I just like other receivers there. I even prefer Derrick Henry because I think it's one of those things, these guys we've seen in the past where they hold out, miss all at camp, maybe miss a game, and they usually get hurt, and they're just not very efficient early on. So I really try to stay away from him, but I would still obviously still draft him, but not. He's more of a guy the late second on any of these teams. But the Raiders are probably his best fit because he'll be the guy, and there's no one going to challenge him for any kind of carries or targets. Great
year last year with the Raiders, for him. And the Broncos would be a big FU move if he could go there and play for them. In addition to Javonte Williams, they're confident at least that he'll be ready to go week one. They also have Samaje Perine there. But yes, if he would go there, Jacobs would be their best running back automatically. And he The only guy that I can remember really who's come out of sitting out for a while, holding out, and then comes back and doesn't miss a beat. I remember Emmitt Smith did it that year with the Cowboys. Their second Super Bowl that year, after they won their first one, he wanted to get paid. The Cowboys were holding out on, no, we're not paying you, we're not paying you. He missed the first two games. I remember the first one was a Monday night game. They lost to, I think, Washington or the Giants, one or the other. They lost week 2, and then Jerry Jones said, okay, yeah, you can we'll go ahead and pay you now. And then they ended up winning the Super Bowl that year.
Right.
So, but not many guys can do it. You're right. Usually they hold out like that, or if they miss time, Le'Veon Bell, for example, they miss time and things like that. It's hard for them, I think, usually to get off on the right foot and stay healthy. I would love him on the Broncos, I think, though. I think that'd be a great spot for him there. But again, you got a lot of carries on him. Great year last year, but be cautious of that. Okay, let's look at a guy now who's been a backup forever. Kareem Hunt. Now, he visited the Saints. He obviously lost Alvin Kamara for 3 games. He's been linked to the Vikings. Could he go back to the Browns? Could the Cowboys bring him in? Could the Bengals bring him in? Out of those 5 teams, is there a spot you like him more than the most? More than the rest, I should say.
I kind of like him in all these spots, just different reasons. You know, I think the Vikings could be interesting because they have no one really proven behind Madison. And as much as I like Madison, he really hasn't proved he can handle a full workload.
Right.
So Hunt would be there, kind of play the old Madison role. And if anything happens to Madison, would just be huge in that offense. Going back to the Browns, you know what he's going to be. Anything happens to Chubb. So that's, you know, and he was productive, you know, even as the backup, not getting as many carries all the time. So I like him going back there. Cowboys, obviously, because they have nobody behind Pollard, really. And both of them are kind of the same running back. So I kind of like them there. Bengals, same thing. They have no one behind Mixon. They really get a good change of pace back out of the backfield. And then I just heard that the Saints, he was there visiting with the Saints. Again, that could be interesting just because Kamara's out. And then I think that would really, if he would end up with the Saints, the biggest deal would be Kendrick Miller would just have no fantasy value at all. And even with Kamara down, I think they're going to rely on Jamal Williams early because he's a veteran.
Right.
They know what they have. And so I think he's going to get the majority of the carries early on. So Kendrick Miller's one of those guys that I think no matter what happens, if they bring Hunt in or not, he's going to kind of this is not going to be a great year for him in fantasy.
It wasn't that long ago. Hunt was a stud running back, a stud number 1 guy. And the last couple of years maybe have helped him to have less carries, less touches, which he could be a breakout kind of guy for a team if he goes to the right spot. Saints would be good for him, I think. But Browns and Bengals again, the Bengals, I think it'd be funny to see him in Cincinnati again, another FU moment there if he did that.
Right.
The Vikings also, yes, because if I'm him, the Vikings are attractive just because of like what you said. Madison's never handled a full workload. And you know, it's something they could need to rely on him, and out of the backfield, they want to throw him the ball quite a bit, I would think. So I'm with you on that one. All right, Chad, I want to go through some of these some combinations that I worked up if you were in a draft, and we'll just go PPR league with 4-point passing touchdown, regular flex, all those things. And I'm going to give you 3 different groupings of players. And I want to know which one you like the most, which one you like the least, and which one's in the middle. If I gave you a team and started you off with, and I'm not giving you the order they were drafted, but by position, I'll give you a quarterback, a running back, 2 receivers. Herbert, McCaffrey, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb. That's grouping A. Grouping B, Lamar Jackson, Nick Chubb, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins. And then group C, Justin Fields, Austin Eckler, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Out of those 3 groupings of 4 players, I give you a chance to take one of those to start your team. Which one do you like the most?
I'm telling you right now, B is my least favorite.
Okay, with Jackson, Chubb, Brown, and Higgins.
Chubb, Brown, Higgins, yeah. I think, and the other 2 are pretty close. I think I would go C. I think it'd be Fields, Eckler, Hill, St. Brown, because I think that combo probably has my 2 favorite receivers of the group. Eckler's a PPR guy. He's the man. He should stay healthy, a top 3 running back, and then Fields gives you the rushing upside. I do like that A group though. The A group's it's so close because I think I trust. It's just weird. Those would be 2 and be very close because I like Herbert better than Fields, but I just like the receivers I think better. And I think McCaffrey and Eckler are kind of a wash, but those two I think are 1A, 1B, and then the other group's probably like D. That's not a group. I don't like that at all. So
I think I'm with you on the one I like the least. The Herbert versus Fields is what gets me, and also a full season of CMC with Shanahan.
Right.
That's the only thing that attracts me to that group. I'm with the receivers, Devontae Adams and CeeDee Lamb. I'd much rather have obviously Hill and St. Brown. I love St. Brown. I already said that. He's a guy I love this year. But I think I would take the Herbert CMC group over the Fields, Eckler, Tyreek Hill, St. Brown group, just because of where I think what I think he can do this year with the new OC in there, and what I think CMC could do with a full year in that San Francisco offense. And Shanahan, just like his dad, knows how to use running backs, and so I'm excited to see where that ends, where that goes this year with Christian McCaffrey. So
and I think the big one on that first group is just, and I don't know why I don't trust Devontae Adams. I think it's just Jimmy G, but he's had like double-digit touchdowns, like I think 7 of the last 8 years. So it's just he's one of those guys. I'm like, he's good. I just don't know.
Right.
And so that's I think the one part is like, if I get Devontae Adams, normal with Devontae Adams, I think that first group is probably the best. Yeah.
All right. Let's go over this now. We'll wrap up with it's a little shorter podcast tonight, but let's do. And this was something you came up with. Guys, you're afraid to draft, but know they'll go off if you don't draft them. So, guys, you're afraid to draft, but know will go off if you don't. It's the GYAATDBKWGOIYD game.
Exactly. So just like we did in school. So
yes. So all right,
we can popcorn it. Yeah, we'll back and forth.
Yeah. Give me your first one.
First one, we kind of talked about Javonte Williams. He's coming off the injury. I know, but that's now that stat that I just got. Yeah. And I like that offense. I tell you, they look decent at the end of the year. I don't think Russ is washed. They've got some good receivers, a good tight end, good defense. They have a good coach now. So I think I just know it's one of those things where it's like, I want to draft him, but I'm like, just depending where he's at. I know if I don't, he will just go nuclear and he'll stay healthy. But if I do draft him, he will die or something. So
that's pretty savage.
I'm scared to draft him, but he's one of those guys I kind of want to draft just because he's got that huge upside.
For me, it's Miles Sanders, and great year last year in Philly, goes to Carolina now. He's going to obviously be the one guy. He is the number one guy there. You got a rookie quarterback. They added Adam Thielen to that. You've got a new head coach there in Frank Reich. But I don't know how much of Miles Sanders' success was scheme, and if he'll be able to thrive under. Look, the offensive line in Carolina is not as good as the one in Philly. So, and you're playing with a quarterback not as good as the one in Philly, at least not yet. And you're playing with receivers that aren't as good as the ones in Philly. All of that leads me to believe that Miles Sanders won't be as good as he was in Philly. Even if he does get the same amount of opportunities, it's going to be harder for him to score touchdowns, harder to gain yards. So Sanders is a guy I'm afraid to draft, but I feel like if I do draft, I think it's going to be a disappointment. But if I don't take him, I feel he might go off.
Yeah, he's a weird one too because I kind of like him where you get him, and he's just got he's got a huge opportunity, but like he's a guy that I could see every week, 23 carries, 82 yards, no touchdowns, and really nothing in the passing game, and that's gonna do it even as a 4th round pick. So I like Sanders, but I agree with you. It scares me drafting him, especially if I get him as an RB2, or if you go 0, he's a guy that if I go 0 running back and go wide receiver first 2 rounds, he's usually my RB1, and that just I'm not confident with it at all. So I agree with you there. My next guy we've talked about, I think everybody is this guy would be on almost everybody's list, is Kyle Pitts. Because we know the talent, we know how good he is. He had a good rookie year, he just couldn't find the end zone. He's on a team that just runs the ball all the time. So now you're thinking, maybe the 3rd year he's in, they could do some stuff with Bijan, but he's got Desmond Ridder, and they're not good. So they're not. He's just. But it's one of those things where tight ends, if you look at it, we talked about it yesterday, where else you're going to go that you have confidence. Sometimes you just go, I'm just going to go talent and hope for the best. So I really don't like drafting him, but sometimes I just kind of end up drafting him.
it's going to be a bad quarterback situation if Desmond Ridder will be the starter there. If that's the guy, no, I shouldn't say bad, unproven,
Right.
and needs to show a lot this year. It'd be a growing up year for him, I would think, with the Falcons if he's a starting quarterback throughout the season. And yes, they just added another guy who will catch passes in Bijan Robinson that might have gone to Kyle Pitts because he's going to be a nice outlet if Ridder doesn't see anybody open and the rush is coming in. Again, a fairly new quarterback here we're talking about. And he might look to where the tight end's usually a safety valve. He's going to have Bijan Robinson out there, Tyler Algier out there as well, and Cordell Patterson is options also, not to mention Drake London Deep. So I'm with you. I agree with that on Kyle Pitts. I don't think I'd want to get him. I won't be seeking him out. I also will not be seeking out, and I hate saying this, I feel like I own him in almost every league I'm in or have owned him, is DeAndre Swift. And, he is my new muscle hamster. My new Doug Martin, the one the Reggie Bush that I would hype up. Joik Bell, I think, was one guy I hyped up too. And then, anyway, so Swift, though, going to Philly, it's a great opportunity. I think he'll be successful, but I just don't know if I have the volume there because of how many weapons they have in the backfield and Jalen Hurts with his legs. So I'm not saying Swift will be a bust. I just don't know if Swift will get enough volume to warrant where he's going to go in the draft. And that's what scares me about DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I'm with you there because there's so many weapons. I think they're going to use Penny. They brought him in. Yeah. That's the only thing is that Penny has shown he gets hurt all the time. So if Penny would go down, Swift ends up being their number one. But I'm with you too. I'm like, he's there a lot of times on these mock drafts, and I just can't pull the trigger a lot of times. Yeah. And I think I even made the decision today because I put a trade into the league, so I'm waiting to hear back from an owner.
Right.
But so I thought about but it has nothing to do with Swift. But I made a decision. I think I'm going to keep Madison over Swift in that league, just because I think Madison's going to get every opportunity to be the guy there, and Swift's splitting time. So yeah, I'm with you with Swift. I like the talent. He's still young, but there's a lot of question marks even on that high-powered offense.
Yep.
Another guy, which I guess, because he got hurt, but even was Kadarius Toney, because he's a guy that in the few games that he played last year with the Chiefs, he proved that he could be the guy. He could be the new Tyreek Hill there, but he can't stay healthy. And they really have no other proven number one. So he's a guy where it's like, I want to draft him, but I'm like, I'm just afraid I'm just wasting roster spot because he's going to get hurt. He won't be able to come back. He'll play like 5 games. So the nice thing is with him, though, you can usually get him pretty late. So he'd end up being a flex guy more often than not for you anyways. But it's still one of those things like I just can't, even though the talent's there. And I think with that Chiefs offense, but it's like he scares me because I know if I don't draft him, then he'll stay healthy again and he'll be putting up Tyreek Hill numbers.
For all the shit that we give Bill Belichick for how much he completely ruins fantasy teams and weeks for us with the running back situation and the wide receivers that he drafts highly that end up flaming out. We could have that this year in Kansas City just because outside of Kelsey, Mahomes is safe like Brady used to be safe. Kelsey's safe like, Gronk used to be safe. Those guys are safe plays that are going to be really good this year. But outside of that, I don't know which wide receiver I want in Kansas City. I know they're all on the board as far as value goes, but like if you tell me this guy's here, as far as if it's the right ADP for them, which one do you want? I don't know. I can't make a decision on them. Kadarius Toney is one of those guys, perfect example, where it could be any wide receiver is great. Give me Mahomes, give me Kelsey. I'll figure everything else out. I don't know it's just hard to guess on Kansas City receivers who's going to be the one to stand out.
Yeah, and they proved that in the past couple of years where it's like one guy each different game. So it's really trying to stay afraid, get, like you said, Mahomes, Kelsey, and then just get receivers elsewhere. And especially if you're doing DFS too, like a lot of people like to stack. I wouldn't stack this team just because you don't know where it's going except for Kelsey. So yeah, I'm pretty much staying away from all Chiefs receivers, which sounds weird.
Because they're going to score a lot of points.
Exactly, unless they don't make the playoffs. So
right.
So, but yeah, so that's that.
Speaking of receivers that also I will stay away from, and I hate stinks. I'm a Buckeye fan, and I loved what he did early in his career when you couldn't guard Mike. Can't get Michael Thomas on the field now. That's the other problem. Now, he's played, like 10 games in 3 years or some ridiculous number. Yeah. And what I like about he signed a 1-year, $10 million prove-it contract. He's got the best quarterback he's played with since Drew Brees. So I like those things about him. But you got Chris Olave there, and Olave is going to be the number one guy. I don't know if I trust Thomas to stay healthy. I love the fact he did the prove it deal, the 1 year, $10 million. He knows he can be a free agent after this, but so he has plenty of incentive to go out there and play. I just don't know if I trust he'll play 13 games even.
Yeah. But that's the thing. But if he does 13, 14 games, he's such a PPR machine. Like, yeah. It's kind of hard to remember because it seems like it's been forever. But he was so good. But I'm with you. Like, I don't know. I mean, and the weird part is, like, DeMar Hamlin died, and he's been back on the field before Michael Thomas with his injury. So it's crazy. I mean, but again, like, the draft capital is one of those guys where it's like, I think you take a chance on him. Because again, you're not having to, he's a guy, you're probably going to be your wide receiver 5 or 6 most of the time. So it's nice. But I'm like you too, is like, but I think he's a guy that I have no problem doing it because where you're drafting him. Right. Because if he can get back to 100 reception season, I mean, holy cow, as that way you're going to get him. So as opposed to this other guy that I'm talking about is Davante Adams. Who I love. Davante Adams. I had him last year on a couple teams. I love his talent. I love the fact as a Bears fan he's not in Green Bay anymore. But it's just where you're having to draft him. I would rather take guys like, I think, Derrick Henry. I'd rather take St. Brown. I'd rather take, sometimes A.J. Brown slides down there. I'd rather take like Jonathan Taylor. I think I'd rather take all those guys over him because Davante Adams is going. I've seen him at the end of the first, but he's mostly going early, mid, second. And I just even like Garrett Wilson and Olave. There was a couple. I think it was in the draft I did with my kids and some of their friends yesterday, where I had the 8th pick and I took Bijan first. It came back around. Davante Adams was still there, and I took Olave over him.
So Adams, I looked at his stats. I want to make sure I got this right. But so last year with the dysfunction of the Raiders and, Carr, I thought Carr played better than he got credit for. But nonetheless, Adams finished with 100 catches, 1,516 yards, 14 touchdowns. Hell of a year. Year before that in Green Bay was 123, 1,553, and 11. Year before that, 115, 1,374, and 18 touchdowns. So you're talking about a guy who's got 43 touchdowns in the last 3 years. Granted, he had Rodgers at his better point than Rodgers was last year, but he also had Carr on a team that, the quarterback or the coach didn't like what the quarterback was doing. You got Garoppolo there now, which probably hurts Adams.
Yeah.
Do you think he's a 100-catch guy then or not? You think he's less than 100?
I think he's probably going to be a little. You're talking probably 92. I mean, he's still going to have the receptions because they have no one else really there to throw to. Right. I just, I kind of like Jimmy G early in his career because he just won games, but he's not a fantasy guy. Yeah. And all I can think about is in that Super Bowl where he just overthrew that guy wide open that would have sealed the game. And, and he hasn't really been the same since, and he gets hurt all the time. And so it's one of those things, man. Receivers with not consistent quarterback play are hard to trust. And even especially if let's say Jacob sits out, then, why are you're triple teaming Adams if you're
right. Waller's not there anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my only he's still going to get open, get his. I just don't know if that team's going to be throwing. And again, I don't know Garoppolo, he could get Adams could be a guy that gets 15 targets a game and ends up with 6 receptions.
So this guy I'm going to close out with for us on this game, the GYAATDBKWGOIYD game. And it's somebody who I've thought he's been underrated, but I just talked about him, and Derek Carr. I thought he's underrated as a quarterback. I thought he caught too much shit from Gruden and then from Josh McDaniels also last year. And so I like Carr. I don't want to be in a position like in a 12-team league where he's my number one quarterback. I want to make sure I can stay away from that. And I don't want to have to make him a number 2 I've got to use very much. And that sounds bad, but because I think he's a good quarterback. I do. I think he's better than he gets credit for. But I don't want to have to rely on him this year to make or break my team, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does, yeah. And again, if you're in a 12-team yeah, you may have to rely on him to be your
Right.
number one. In a 10 team, you're probably not. But he's really going to be more, like you just said, a backup if you've got Herbert,
Mhm.
you know, Mahomes, Allen, like a guy like, hey, on the bye week, I need him in there.
Sure.
And, or, you know, in week 16 or 16,
Right.
if you have Hurts and they've clinched,
Yeah.
and you know, then Carr's playing or something like that. But yeah, I think he'll have a decent year in New Orleans. It's just I just don't know what to expect really.
I can't get a vibe on the Saints this year. They're probably the best team in the crappiest division, but
Yeah,
are they the crappiest division? Which South is worse? AFC South? I think NFC South probably, right?
I think the NFC South is because the Jaguars. The Jaguars are a good team, and I think people forget, like, the Titans were a number one seed 2 years ago, so the Titans
Yeah.
aren't horrible.
Right.
That, like, the AFC South could have, like, Carr's obviously the best quarterback, but they'll have, like, you know,
You got first
Bryce
time
Young,
guys.
Trask or Baker, and
Right.
then Ritter. So I mean, it's not good up there.
So yes, that's where I'm at on Carr. But you're right. If you wait on quarterbacks, especially in a 12-team league, you might get stuck with him. The worst possible combination for me would be if my two quarterbacks were Tua and Carr. You know what I mean? That would scare me the most.
Right.
I-
Well, when
I-
you're drafting, when you're
Yeah.
drafting, think about that kind of stuff. Like, if you've got a Tua, then you make sure you get somebody. Like, although if you're drafting Tua, you probably want to get Tua and then try to turn around and take Cousins or something. Like, you
Yeah.
got to take your quarterbacks pretty quick. So yeah, don't
All
draft
right, that
quarterbacks
was-
too early, but get a good quarterback.
That was fun, Chad. Thanks for everyone tuning in. And again, fantasydraftproxies.com if you want some help with your draft or want one of the quote unquote experts, I guess, to do the draft for you. Even that's an option they have. They've got some other options about helping you with your team throughout the year, all these different things. But fantasydraftproxies.com. This has been Fantasyball Now on powered by DSP Media here on FanStream Sports. So, Chad, let's do it again soon. Maybe tomorrow we'll knock one out as more news comes down, and we'll keep everyone posted and updated on what's going on in fantasy football, Chad.
All right, take care.